He betrayed me for his first love, only to lose her to another man. But when I revealed her child wasn't his, and that she once plotted to kill him, his world collapsed. In the end, he didn't just lose me, he lost everything twice over. The wind was cold that day, the kind that slid like icy fingers into the seams of your clothes. Even now, I remember the way the sunlight fell over the city, turning the shop windows into sheets of gold. It was an ordinary day to anyone else. But for me it was the day fate looped back on itself. "Come on, Isla, the movie's going to start." The voice was warm, teasing, and so painfully familiar it made my stomach turn. Liam Carter. My husband. The man I once believed was my anchor in the storm. I turned to look at him, letting my gaze linger. Tall, fit, framed by the sun like the lead of a romance drama. The corners of his hazel eyes lifted slightly when he smiled, and for a fleeting moment, I remembered how that smile used to feel like safety. But that was before I knew. Before I learned that in my last life this man, the man I'd saved with my own body, would stand beside my hospital bed with another woman and decide I had lived long enough. The memory slammed into me as if no time had passed at all. The screech of tires. The white blur of the Beetle as it tore around the corner. The moment my body moved without thinking, shoving Liam out of the way with all my strength. The sound of the impact. A dull, brutal thud. My body flying, crashing onto the asphalt. The hot rush of blood in my ears, then the creeping darkness. I had lingered in that darkness for 3 years, trapped in a body that couldn't move or speak. The doctors called it a vegetative state. I called it a living grave. When I finally slipped away, it wasn't the accident that claimed me. It was Liam and Sabrina Cole, his white moonlight, his first love, leaning over me in the dim hospital room, fingers pulling at the oxygen tube that kept me alive. They cried. They told themselves it was merciful. Then they walked out hand in hand. After the funeral, my soul had drifted in confusion, tethered by rage. I had hovered in the cemetery as Liam knelt before my grave, his shoulders shaking. For a moment I thought maybe he regretted it. Maybe deep down guilt gnawed at him. Then I heard him speak. "I owe you so much, Isla," he whispered. "If you hadn't taken that hit, my life never would have gotten back on track. I never would have found my true love again. Not sorrow. Not grief. Gratitude for my death." The kind of rage that burned through me in that moment could have leveled cities. And then, without warning, I opened my eyes. The street came into focus. My coffee was still warm in my hands. Liam was standing in the same spot he had been before the accident, smiling that same deceptive smile. I froze. The smells, the sounds, the sharp bite of the cold, all of it was too vivid to be a dream. This wasn't a memory. It wasn't some cruel hallucination. I was back. Back to the day of the accident. In my last life, I had thrown myself into harm's way for Liam without a second thought. I had believed saving him was the only choice. In this life I wasn't going to move an inch. He was still the celebrated darling of the traditional dance world back then. His legs, long, strong, precise, were his pride in his career. He had danced since he was a boy, winning trophies and collecting praise like air. But I knew the truth behind his shine. I knew that when he had been one setback away from giving up, I had been the one to keep the lights on. I had been the one to scrape together rent while he focused on his art. I had been the one to beg a retired master to choreograph a custom piece just for him. And I knew how little he thought I deserved in return. "There you go again, daydreaming," he said with mock exasperation, stepping toward the curb. I heard it then, the low, fast growl of an engine. My eyes slid past Liam's shoulder to the corner of the street, where a white Beetle rounded into view. Through the windshield I saw her, Sabrina Cole. Beautiful, poised, eyes locked on Liam instead of the road. I smiled. The moment had arrived. "What are you?" "Move, Isla." The impact came before the last word left his mouth. The car struck him hard enough to lift him off his feet. His body hit the pavement with a hollow crack before the tires rolled right over his legs. There was a sound then, sharp and sickening like thick branches snapping. Screams followed, some his, some from the crowd. Coffee spilled across the pavement from my dropped cup, a dark, steaming stain spreading into the cracks of the sidewalk. It was almost poetic. The chaos unfolded in a rush. Someone called an ambulance. A man in a leather jacket tried to keep Liam still while others shouted for space. My heart pounded, but not from panic, from the strange, cold satisfaction humming in my veins. The paramedics arrived, lifting him onto a stretcher. "Are you his wife?" one asked, glancing at me. "Yes," I said, my voice steady, even gentle. They didn't know I'd just watched justice begin to take shape. Hours later, the emergency room doors swung open and a surgeon approached me, his expression grim. "The patient's injuries are severe. Both legs are completely crushed. The only way to save his life is amputation." "From where?" I asked. "The thigh down," he said after a beat. "Though if we find more tissue damage during surgery, we may have to amputate higher." "Then go higher," I replied evenly. "Even at the waist if you must. Just save him." The doctor blinked at my readiness, perhaps mistaking it for desperate devotion. I clasped his hand lightly. "Please. He means everything to me." If only he knew. When Liam opened his eyes 2 days later, the first thing he saw was me sitting by his bedside. "Isla." His voice was hoarse, cracked from disuse. I smiled faintly. "You're awake." He blinked, disoriented, then frowned. Why can't I feel my legs?" I let the silence stretch. "What happened?" His voice rose, panic threading through it. "They had to amputate," I said softly. "It was the only way to save you." His eyes went bloodshot, his breath coming fast. No, I'm a dancer. I can't." "I know," I murmured, my tone perfectly tender. Inside, I savored the raw despair in his face. This was the man who had once thanked me for dying. Now his career, his pride, his future, all of it had been shattered under the wheels meant for me. And that was enough for now. The rest could wait. Because the game had only just begun. The first 2 days after Liam woke were the loudest silence I'd ever heard. He didn't cry, didn't scream. He just lay there staring at the ceiling, blinking once in a while like a man trying to wake from a nightmare. I knew what was going through his mind. The same man who had once believed he was destined to be the country's top traditional dancer now had nothing beneath the blanket but empty space. His entire identity, carved in sweat, bruises, and endless rehearsals, had been wiped away in an afternoon. And I was the only one who stayed by his side. On the third morning, I arrived with a tray. "Breakfast," I said, setting it gently on the bedside table. "Congee with chicken, just how you like it. And some steamed buns." He didn't look at me. His jaw flexed as he stared out the window. I pulled the small table over his lap, set the spoon in his hand. He didn't move. "I'm not hungry," he muttered. I smiled, soft, patient. "Then eat a little for me." It was the first real thing he'd done since the surgery. He glanced at me. There was pain in his eyes and a flicker of something else. Gratitude maybe. Or need. That was fine. I wanted him to need me. The truth was, I didn't give a damn about whether he finished the congee. My mind was already working several steps ahead. We were tied together in more ways than marriage vows. Our media company, the one everyone thought was Liam's brainchild, had been built from my capital, my connections, my relentless effort. When he was still teaching in a cramped dance studio with peeling mirrors, I'd been knocking on doors, convincing investors to take him seriously. Back then, I had believed in him more than I believed in myself. Now I believed in the company. But not in him. If I divorced him now, half the assets would be mine on paper. But I knew better. Liam, with his fresh, tragic accident narrative, would flood the press with pity stories. I'd be the heartless wife who left him in his darkest hour. That alone could tank my standing in the industry, and worse, sabotage the loyalty of our contracted artists. No, this had to be done slowly, methodically, and that meant for now I had to be the perfect wife. I settled into a routine. Mornings, I'd be there before the nurses, adjusting his pillows, washing his face with warm water, helping him with the kind of quiet dignity that looked good in anyone's eyes. I learned how to help him into a sitting position without making it seem like I noticed the missing weight of his legs. When he refused to see anyone, not friends, not colleagues, I was the one who kept him company, playing old dance competition recordings for him, letting him rant about how unfair it all was. Afternoons, I'd slip away for errands, or meetings, but in truth I was laying the groundwork. Meeting with managers. Reviewing accounts. Quietly shifting certain operational approvals into my name under the guise of lightening Liam's burden while he recovered. Evenings, I returned to the hospital with home-cooked meals. I made a show of burning my hands on the wok, coming in with blisters from handling hot dishes. All so he could see what I endured for him. One night I brought his favorite dish, braised pork belly, glossy and rich. As I set the plate down, he caught sight of the fresh blister across my palm. "How did you burn yourself like that?" he asked, frowning. "It's nothing," I said softly. "As long as you're eating well, a few blisters don't mean a thing." For a moment, the tension in his face eased. He ate more that night than he had in days. The nurses whispered about what a devoted wife I was. Some of the junior staff even looked at me with open admiration. Good. Let them talk. Let them build the legend. Because when the time came, I wanted the world to remember this image of me, the patient, self-sacrificing woman who never left her husband's side. 2 weeks into Liam's recovery, I brought the conversation toward business. "The company's running smoothly," I told him as I refilled his water. "But someone needs to make final calls on contracts and schedules." He looked uneasy. "You can handle it for now." Exactly what I wanted to hear. "I'll just be acting CEO," I assured him. "Everything will still be in your name. When you're ready, you can take it back." Of course, I had no intention of giving it back. The next morning, I walked into the company office like I had never left. The receptionist straightened instantly, offering polite greetings. The artists I had personally recruited years ago smiled warmly. They still remembered who had brought them in. I spent the day reviewing pending deals, rearranging PR priorities, and speaking directly with department heads. I didn't make sweeping changes yet. That would come later. For now, I was rebuilding familiarity and trust. But loyalty wasn't given freely, not in this business. I knew the entertainment industry was fickle. Artists gravitated toward whoever held the power to protect them and secure their futures. That was what Liam used to offer. Now that had to be me. Back at the hospital that night, Liam was in one of his dark moods. "I don't want to see anyone," he said as I came in. "You won't have to," I replied calmly, setting down the thermos of soup. "You just focus on getting better. I'll handle everything else." He didn't thank me. But I didn't need him to. What I needed was time. Time to let him grow used to me as his only lifeline. Time to let the company see me as the true decision-maker. Time to turn acting CEO into something permanent. Because when the day came that I finally walked away, I wouldn't just be leaving Liam Carter. I'd be taking his world with me. The knock didn't come first. The hospital door simply burst open, slamming against the stopper with a sharp thunk. I had been halfway through explaining the latest quarterly numbers to Liam, seated in the visitor's chair at his bedside. My head turned at the noise and my stomach tightened. She stood there in a pale pink coat, her hair curled just so, skin luminous in that studied, effortless way only women who spend more on skincare than rent can manage. Her eyes were wide, glistening, her lower lip trembling. "Sabrina Cole." My pulse didn't quicken. Not the way it used to, not with the same old ache that came from knowing your husband's first love had always lived like a ghost between you. This time my reaction was colder. A quiet narrowing of my eyes. She swept into the room as if I were invisible, her expensive perfume clinging to the sterile hospital air like it didn't belong here. Without a word to me, she crossed the space in 3 fast steps and all but collapsed into Liam's arms. Her face buried into his hospital gown, she sobbed. And it was the kind of sob that seemed tailor-made to wring sympathy from anyone watching. "Liam, I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't mean to. Please don't sue me. I'm begging you." For a split second Liam froze. Then instinct, or maybe memory, overrode everything. "Baby, don't cry. Stop crying already." The word landed like a small explosion in the quiet room. "Baby." I felt my lips curve, though there was nothing warm about it. In our last life I'd never heard him call me that. And in our last life he'd called her that long before he ever pulled my oxygen tube. Sabrina stilled at the word, her sobs faltering as she looked up at him, tears suspended like diamonds on her lashes. From my chair I watched the scene like a theater audience. Liam's gaze softened, his hand twitching as though he meant to comfort her more. Then, as though catching himself, he released her and glanced guiltily toward me. I said the wrong name," he muttered. No, he hadn't. I knew what this was. In that tiny slip I heard the truth. The same truth I had already suspected. Liam wasn't just living through this life once. He'd been reborn too. That look in his eyes wasn't just surprise at seeing her. It was recognition. He remembered. The difference between us was simple. I wasn't pretending. He was. And exposing that secret now wouldn't serve me, not yet. Sabrina, oblivious to the undercurrent, turned back to him with a hiccuped gasp. Please, Liam, don't press charges against me. I never wanted this to happen. It was an accident, I swear. I set my hands in my lap, fingers twining loosely. My voice was calm when I said, funny. That's not what my lawyer says. Her head whipped toward me as if she'd only just remembered I was in the room. What? I smiled thinly. While Liam was in surgery, I contacted the police and retained legal counsel. The complaint is already filed. You'll be receiving the court documents any day now if you haven't already. A flicker of something, guilt? Irritation, flashed in her eyes. Oh, she'd gotten the papers. No doubt she had chosen to come here instead of to me for a reason. The same reason she'd dumped Liam once before. She knew how to cut corners to get what she wanted. I'm willing to pay a settlement if the lawsuit is dropped, she said after a pause, her tone forced steady. I tilted my head. You're offering money? Then perhaps this is negotiable. Liam shifted beside her, clearly about to speak in her favor. I let my gaze slide to him for just a second. Enough for him to hesitate, swallow whatever defense he'd been ready to give. How much do you want? Sabrina asked, her voice small now. Not much, I said. My husband is a dancer who's lost both legs. $250,000 should cover part of the damage, don't you think? Her eyes widened. 200, and that's not. I don't, she faltered, her voice breaking into a fresh wave of tears. I've been abroad for years. I don't have that kind of savings. I can give you $500 a month. I still have to care for my mother. I leaned back in the chair, my smile cool. At that rate you'll be done paying in about 300 years. Is that a joke? She flinched, glancing at Liam for help. And he gave it. Isla, he said, his voice carrying that low edge of reprimand he used to use when he thought I was being unreasonable. Why are you being so harsh? Sabrina's family situation is already tough. You're trying to destroy her. The use of my full name in that tone, as though I were the problem, was almost laughable. For her it was still Sabrina. For me it was Isla. I rose slowly, smoothing my skirt. You turned my husband into an invalid and now you think a few tears will erase that? Dream on. Her lips parted, perhaps to argue, but I was already stepping forward. I caught her arm, my grip firm. Get out. Stop it. Liam barked, his voice sharp. His hands twitched against the blanket, his body shifting like he wanted to get out of bed, but the reality of his missing legs kept him rooted. I didn't look at him. My gaze stayed on Sabrina, whose breath came quick and shallow. She yanked her arm back, glaring at me with watery eyes. You've changed, she said in a low voice, as though we shared some intimate truth. Yes, I said simply. I have. And with that I opened the door wide, waiting. She hesitated, then swept out into the hallway, the sharp click of her heels fading against the tile. The door shut. Silence dropped between Liam and me. You didn't used to be like this, he said finally, his voice quieter now but no less accusatory. You feel like a stranger. A laugh bubbled up in my chest but didn't pass my lips. You want to know why I'm different? I thought. Because I've lived this before. Because I've already seen how this story ends. Instead, I simply lowered my gaze. He tried again, his voice softening. Look, I just think, after everything, Sabrina and we had something once. It's not like we're short on money, right? Can't you just drop it? The pity act again. Trying to coax me the way he always had. But this time I wasn't biting. No, I said, my voice like glass. She will pay. And I meant it, every syllable. After that first hospital confrontation, I didn't need to be told Sabrina came back. I could feel her shadow in the room even when she wasn't there. The faint whiff of her perfume lingering longer than any nurse's shift. The way Liam's expression would shift when he thought I wasn't looking. I didn't catch her visits immediately. She was careful. So was he. But the world has a way of giving away even its best-kept secrets. 3 nights after our argument, I returned to the hospital later than usual, claiming a last-minute meeting. I stepped into the room to find Liam holding his phone with the faintest smile tugging at his mouth. The kind he never wore for me anymore. When he noticed me, the smile vanished. I didn't say anything. Instead, I set the thermos on the table and busied myself with pouring his soup. In the reflection on the stainless steel lid, I saw his screen light up again. A new message. A name, Sabrina Cole. I didn't take his phone. I didn't ask. The more they thought I didn't know, the better. Because I had bigger goals than catching them in flirtatious text exchanges. The company had been running under my watch for 2 weeks now. The first days had been about smoothing over the transition, making sure no one thought of my role as temporary. But acting CEO was a title that only held weight if people believed you were worth following. That was where opportunity came in. And opportunity in this industry usually arrived in the form of crisis. It was Ethan Blake's turn to face one. One Friday morning, just as I stepped into my office, my assistant came rushing in, eyes wide. "Ms. Monroe, Ethan's been exposed in a same-sex scandal. Photos. Videos. It's everywhere." I didn't need to ask what same-sex scandal meant in our conservative industry, or how quickly it could end a career. The bigger problem? Ethan wasn't just one of our artists. He was our top male star, the one who kept the agency's income flowing after Liam's accident. By mid-morning, our PR department was already drafting a statement to distance the company from him. Standard practice. Safe. And exactly the wrong move if I wanted loyalty. "Stop the statement," I said, walking into the conference room where the PR team had gathered. They stared at me like I'd grown another head. "Ms. Monroe, this could drag the entire agency down. We have to." "No," I interrupted. "We protect him." It wasn't about blind loyalty. It was about calculated investment. In this business, artists were like mercenaries. They went where they felt safest. If I protected Ethan when he was under fire, that story would spread through every green room, every casting hall. And Ethan? He would never forget it. That afternoon I started making calls. Not to gossip outlets but to contacts who owed me favors. Private investigators, rival agents, even a couple of quietly sympathetic reporters. Within 3 days I had what I needed. Evidence the scandal had been fabricated by a competing agency trying to tank Ethan's rising popularity. The photos? The videos? Spliced from unrelated footage. By the end of the week the narrative had flipped. Ethan wasn't a disgraced star anymore. He was a wronged one. A victim of malicious competition. Sympathy flooded in. Offers from production houses doubled. And Ethan himself showed up at my office, shutting the door behind him. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "If you hadn't, then don't," I replied with a small smile. "Just remember who stood by you when no one else would." The look in his eyes told me he understood. Meanwhile, Liam and Sabrina's relationship was quietly thriving, thanks in part to me. When nurses told me Sabrina had stopped by, I didn't interfere. When Liam hinted he wanted more privacy in the evenings, I made excuses to work late. Let them meet. Let them think they were clever. The deeper they tangled themselves in each other, the easier it would be to pull them down together. 2 months after the accident, the court ruling came. Sabrina bore the primary responsibility for the crash. She was ordered to pay me $250,000 in compensation. The very next day she showed up, not at my office but at the hospital again. She must have rehearsed her look in the mirror. Pale, eyes shimmering, lips trembling just enough to suggest sleepless nights. "Isla," she began softly, I can't pay all of it at once. But maybe we can work something out. You know, woman to woman." I almost laughed. "Woman to woman? I already worked something out," I said coolly. "It's called a court order. And I'm not in the habit of renegotiating with people who've lied to my face." Her expression faltered for just a moment before settling into something more desperate. "I'm willing to do anything," she whispered, lowering her gaze like she was offering something unspoken. That was when I decided to accelerate my next move. I had already hired a private investigator weeks ago, not just for legal purposes but for insurance. He was good at what he did, the kind of man who could melt into wallpaper and reappear with a camera full of career-ending images. When I called him that night, my voice was calm. "I think our friends are going to make a mistake soon. Be ready." He chuckled on the other end. "Already on it. They're moving faster than you think." Perfect. Because I didn't just want Sabrina's money. I wanted her image. Her reputation. Her security. All of it shattered beyond repair, and Liam's right alongside hers. By the end of that week, the investigator had sent me the first batch of material. Nothing explicit yet, just enough to prove Liam's devoted husband act was a lie. Shots of them meeting in cafes, her hand brushing his gaze lingering too long. I saved them in a locked folder. Not for now. For when they'd hurt the most. And every time I passed Liam in that hospital room, I smiled like a wife with nothing to hide. Because he still thought I didn't know. It happened on a Tuesday night. The message from my investigator came just as I was reviewing a set of contract renewals. One line in his text froze my hand on the pen. "You're going to want to see this." I opened the video file. The screen filled with the grainy intimacy of a hotel suite, the angle expertly chosen. Even in low light, there was no mistaking Liam's broad shoulders, the way he sat at the edge of the bed in his wheelchair. No mistaking the tumble of Sabrina's hair as she bent toward him, her mouth pressing against his like she couldn't breathe without him. The camera stayed steady, unflinching as they moved from kisses to frantic hands, clothing tossed aside like an afterthought. It was clinical, almost detached in its clarity, but the faces were crystal clear. I leaned back in my chair, my lips curling in something between a smile and a snarl. I hadn't even needed to lure them. They'd gift-wrapped this for me. 2 days later, Sabrina strode into my office like she owned it. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, her coat was draped over one arm, and dangling from her fingers was a sleek black bank card. "Here's your $250,000, she said coolly, dropping the card onto my desk like a queen tossing coins to a beggar. "Now we're done." I picked it up, turning it over in my hand. "One night and you made $250,000, I said mildly. "You're worth quite a lot, Miss Cole." Her smile faltered. "What are you implying?" I stood, my hand flashing before she could react. The slap rang out sharp and clean. Her head snapped to the side, a red bloom already rising on her cheek. "How was my husband last night?" I asked, my tone as casual as if we were discussing the weather. "You're insane," she hissed, clutching her face. "I'll sue you." I didn't bother answering. Instead, I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and tossed it onto the desk in front of her. The headline glared from the screen. "Renowned dance instructor Liam Carter caught in hotel tryst with first love Sabrina Cole." Beneath it was a still image, the two of them in a passionate kiss, his hand tangled in her hair. And that was the mild one. The rest were far less ambiguous. Her eyes widened, darting between the screen and me. "This is fake. Photoshopped." "It's..." The office door swung open. Liam rolled in, his face already tight with panic. "Isla, listen to me, this is all a setup." I cut him off with a laugh. "Oh, it's a setup all right. I set it up." His jaw tightened. "You..." The second slap was for him. It cracked against his cheek and he flinched so hard the wheelchair jolted backward. "That one," I said, shaking out my wrist, "was from the blind idiot version of me. And damn, it felt good." Sabrina rushed to his side, glaring at me. "Why can't you just believe him?" I leaned over my desk, pressing a button on the remote. The wall-mounted screen lit up, the high-definition video playing for the entire room. Sabrina's gasp filled the air as her own image flickered on the screen. Bare skin, tangled sheets, Liam's arms around her. The audio left little to the imagination. "Turn it off," she shrieked, lunging for the controls. "Oh, is this part of the setup too?" I asked, my tone icy. Liam's voice was low, desperate. "Let's not do this here. We can talk." Sabrina cut him off, her voice sharp with calculation. "Liam, this is your chance. Leave her. Be with me." That was all the opening I needed. The office door was still open and in the hallway employees had begun to gather. Their eyes widened as they took in the scene. The video on the screen, Sabrina's demand, Liam's guilt written in every line of his face. Finally, Liam turned to me, his voice feigning weariness. "I've already wronged you enough, Isla. I can't wrong Sabrina too. Let's separate on good terms." My breath hitched audibly and I let my knees weaken just enough to stagger back a step. Tears welled instantly, spilling over as I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth. It was an act, but it looked real enough to make even me believe it for half a heartbeat. The corridor outside had gone utterly silent. The artist who had been peeking in now stared at Liam like he was something scraped from the bottom of a shoe. Perfect. Because public sympathy was a currency and I had just claimed the entire vault. I agree to the divorce," I whispered hoarsely, my voice breaking on the words. "Now get out of my sight. Both of you. You're the one who should leave." Sabrina snapped instantly, the mask of fragility cracking to reveal the smug arrogance beneath. I turned my gaze on her, my voice flat. "I own half this company. If you want me gone, buy me out. That was when Ethan stepped forward from the small crowd that had gathered, his expression cold. If Isla leaves, I leave too. Wherever she goes, I go. The statement hit the air like a thrown stone. For a second, Liam just stared at him, thrown off balance. Ethan didn't stop there. He turned to the others. Think about it. When my career was on the line, who fought for me? Who cleared my name? It wasn't Liam. It was Isla. If they treat their top artists like this, what do you think they'll do to you? Murmurs rippled through the group. A few nodded. Then another voice spoke up. Xander, our second biggest male star. I'm going with Isla too. One of our lead actresses added. Same here. Within minutes, the tide had turned. What had begun as a small knot of onlookers became a quiet exodus, every word of loyalty to me striking Liam like another blow. His face drained of color. And for the first time since his accident, he looked genuinely afraid. The day after the confrontation in my office, I was at my lawyer's first thing in the morning. The moment I sat down across from her desk, I slid a neat folder toward her. Inside was a breakdown of everything I wanted, and I wasn't playing small. Full division of marital assets, equal split of company valuation, I began, plus emotional damages for infidelity and public humiliation. She lifted a brow. And this $250,000 transfer to Ms. Cole? Return it to me in full. It was marital property at the time he gifted it. Her smile was slow, appreciative. You're not leaving crumbs on the table, are you? Not a single one, I said. 2 weeks later, the first hearing was over. Liam had tried to play the injured, abandoned man card, showing up in his wheelchair, his voice full of practiced weariness. But the court had my evidence. The affair photos. The hotel video. The witness accounts from my own employees. His lawyer's objections wilted under the weight of proof. When the judge read the ruling, I could almost feel the tremor in Liam's composure. Equal division of assets, totaling a sum he couldn't afford to pay without liquidating parts of the company. Or emotional damages granted in full. Or the $250,000 from Sabrina returned to me within 30 days. The morning I signed the final divorce papers, I walked out of the Civil Affairs office with the crisp new certificate in hand. I didn't tuck it into a file or hide it in my bag. Instead, I held it up toward the pale winter sun, letting the light shine through the watermark. I snapped a photo right there on the steps. By noon it was on my verified account, captioned simply, "A new beginning." The gossip blogs pounced within the hour. They dug up the affair scandal, the slap in my office, the public breakup. For 7 days straight, Liam Carter and Sabrina Cole trended under every possible insult hashtag. The stock of Carter Productions nosedived in real time. On the 5th day my phone lit up with his name. By the 18th missed call I answered. "Who is this?" I said, deliberately flat. "Isla, you posted that on purpose. You're ruining us." His voice was tight, as if he were trying to keep from shouting. I swirled the wine in my glass, glancing at the stock ticker on my laptop. I was just celebrating my freedom from a cheating bastard. Is that a problem? He was silent for a beat. Then softer. Do our years together mean nothing to you? Do you have to be this cruel? A laugh slipped out before I could stop it. Cruel? You conspired with your mistress to humiliate me in front of my own company. Don't talk to me about cruel. I ended the call before he could reply. That was when his attacks began. At first I thought the sudden collapse of 3 ongoing negotiations was bad luck. A production pulling out, a sponsor reconsidering. But when I looked closer, the pattern was too clean. Each client had gone straight to Carter Productions within a week of canceling on me. He wasn't outcompeting me with better offers. He was undercutting prices so low it bled his own company, just to keep me from landing the contracts. Malicious competition. Pure spite. I could have gone legal, but that would take months. Instead, I decided to bleed him faster than he could bleed me. The first step was finding the leak. Someone inside my company was feeding him my negotiation details. Otherwise, there was no way he'd know which deals to poach before they closed. It didn't take long to find them. An assistant in the acquisitions department. A sweet-faced woman who never met my eye when I spoke to her. A little digging revealed the connection. She'd been Carter Productions' intern 2 years ago. I didn't fire her. I promoted her. I made her my shadow for key meetings, dropped hints about the biggest project of the year, even left marked-up proposals accidentally visible on my desk when she was in the room. The project in question? A TV drama script I had no intention of producing. It had a flashy premise, sure. Enough to make greedy eyes light up. But the property rights were a disaster. The script was plagiarized from an unpublished novel that had already been filed for copyright protection. Any adaptation would be dead on arrival the moment lawyers got involved. For 2 weeks I built the illusion. At lunch in the break room I carelessly said, if it were me I'd bet the whole company on this one. I let her overhear calls where I gushed about game-changing returns and international distribution. When the bait was set, I left a final piece of fake correspondence on my desk. A mock investor letter promising co-financing if we moved fast. That afternoon I spotted her phone tilted under the desk, the faint sound of her nails tapping a message. Perfect. 3 days later the industry buzz hit me first. Carter Productions had just acquired the very project I'd been eyeing. Liam called me that night, smug and gloating. Thanks for the tip, Isla. When this blows up, remember you could have been part of it. I smiled into the phone. Oh, I'll remember. Because when that project collapsed, it wouldn't just take his investment with it. It would take whatever was left of his company's credit line, his investor trust, and his last chance at a real comeback. And I'd be right here to watch it happen. The first whispers reached me a month after Carter Productions announced their groundbreaking drama project. An email from a contact in the publishing industry read simply, "You were right. The author's lawyer is moving in." By the end of the week it was public. The drama was based on a plagiarized novel. The original author had registered the work years earlier, and the copyright claim was airtight. The day filming wrapped, a cease and desist landed on Liam's desk. Investors panicked. Distributors pulled out overnight. The production company that had partnered with him demanded damages. By Friday, Carter Productions' accounts were frozen. I sat in my office, sipping tea as the news scrolled across my computer screen. Carter Productions faces bankruptcy amid copyright scandal. Almost felt bad. Almost. 2 weeks later, the company filed for bankruptcy protection. Sabrina naturally didn't stick around for the funeral. She had already been spotted on the arm of Victor Huang, a real estate tycoon nearly twice her age, at a charity gala. Her pale silk gown and diamond earrings had made headlines. Liam's absence from her side was barely noted. I didn't have to imagine how that felt for him. Losing the woman he'd ruined 2 lives for, watching her slip away into another man's luxury car without a backward glance. The night I saw them again in person was unplanned. Ethan and I had gone to a downtown club to meet a director interested in casting 2 of our newer artists. The private room we'd booked was across the hall from one of the VIP lounges. Halfway through the evening I stepped out to take a call. The lounge door burst open and there she was, Sabrina, her hand hooked lazily around Victor's arm. Behind her, Liam's wheelchair caught on the doorframe as he tried to follow. His face was flushed either from alcohol or humiliation. "Sabrina, wait," he said, his voice low and urgent. She turned, eyes narrowing. "What do you want now?" I need to talk to you." "We were." Her laugh cut him off, sharp as broken glass. "We were nothing. You think I'm going to play nursemaid to a bankrupt cripple for the rest of my life?" The word hung in the hallway like a slap. Victor shifted uncomfortably, clearly not wanting a scene. But Sabrina wasn't done. "You had your chance, Liam," she said, stepping closer to jab a manicured finger into his chest. "And you blew it. You couldn't keep me, you couldn't keep the company, and now you can't even keep yourself upright without those wheels." When he tried to grab her wrist, she shoved him. The wheelchair jerked backward and he barely caught himself on the armrest before tipping over. But she wasn't finished. Her stiletto heel came down hard on his fingers where they clutched the wheel. Liam gasped, his knuckles whitening as pain contorted his face. "Want me to break your hands too?" she hissed. Victor finally stepped in, murmuring something as he steered her away toward the elevator. Liam stayed there in the hall for a moment, shoulders heaving, before trying to push himself toward the exit. The wheel stuck on the lip of the carpet and the motion jerked his injured hand. He cursed under his breath. Ethan emerged from our room just in time to see the tail end of it. His brows lifted in sharp disbelief before his mouth twisted into a cold smile. "Serves him right," he muttered as he passed me. I didn't disagree. It was past 1 in the morning when Ethan's car pulled up outside my building. I was halfway to the lobby when I saw the shadow at the edge of the street lamp. His head was wrapped in a fresh bandage, his suit rumpled, his skin pale beneath the glow. "What are you doing here?" I asked, stopping a safe distance away. Ethan stepped in front of me instantly. "You're not welcome here." Liam didn't even look at him. His gaze was fixed on me, raw and unguarded. "I was wrong," he said. "I messed up. I should have never let you go. I had the perfect wife and I threw her away. I let Sabrina fool me." His voice cracked, and before I could react, his hand came up, and he slapped himself. Hard. And again. The sharp smack of each strike echoed through the quiet street. Ethan stared, half in disbelief, half in disgust. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped. "You've got no right to even think about her anymore." But Liam ignored him, still staring at me. "Isla, you still love me, right? You're the only one who ever truly cared about me." I stepped around Ethan, my expression cool. "Don't call me that," I said. "You don't deserve to use my name." He flinched but tried again. "Just listen to me. In our last life." That made me pause. "In our last life?" I echoed. He nodded quickly, leaning forward in his chair. "You were in a coma for 3 years after your accident. And during that time Sabrina stayed by my side. She helped me through my lowest point. I can't explain it, but I was reborn. I remember everything. That's how I know." His voice trailed off, perhaps expecting shock or disbelief. Instead, I took a slow step closer. "I believe you," I said. Relief flooded his face. "You do." I leaned down until my eyes were level with his. "Because I was reborn too." The words hit him like a blow. His pupils dilated, his mouth opening slightly as if the ground beneath him had shifted. "The Isla Monroe who loved you," I continued softly, "was the one you killed. The one whose oxygen tube you pulled out with your own hands." This time there was no act in my smile, only the pure satisfaction of watching him realize that whatever game he thought he was playing, I'd been playing it longer. The night Liam learned I was reborn too, something in his face cracked. It wasn't the kind of crack that led to anger or shouting. It was quieter, deeper. Like a man realizing the foundation of his entire house was made of sand. For a week he didn't try to contact me, which honestly I welcomed. I had bigger plans for that final blow, and they required patience. The opportunity came faster than I expected. Victor Huang threw one of his legendary garden parties, an annual spectacle where the city's wealthiest preened under imported chandeliers strung through century-old trees. Ethan had been invited through a film investor and he insisted I come. I didn't go to gawk at Victor. I went because I knew Sabrina would be there. And if Sabrina was there, Liam would be lurking somewhere nearby, unable to let her go even now. We found him within the hour. He wasn't on the guest list, of course. But I spotted his wheelchair near the edge of the rose garden, half hidden in shadow, his eyes locked on Sabrina as she laughed with a cluster of socialites. I walked straight toward him, Ethan following at my shoulder like a silent guard. "Enjoying the view?" asked, my tone light. He startled, then schooled his face into a frown. "Why are you here?" "Same reason you are," I said, crouching slightly so my voice wouldn't carry. "To watch a performance." Before he could answer, I slipped my phone from my clutch and tapped the screen. A recording began to play, Sabrina's voice, unmistakable, low and venomous. "If he'd just died in that first accident, we wouldn't be in this mess. I told you I could have cut the brake lines myself. No one would have known." Liam's breath hitched audibly. His eyes darted to me, then back to the phone. "This is fake," he said weakly. "Sure," I murmured. "And so is this." Another clip. This one of a doctor's voice. "Paternity results are conclusive. The child is not biologically related to Mr. Liam Carter." The world seemed to drain of color for him in that moment. His hand gripped the wheel rim so tightly I thought his knuckles might tear through skin. I leaned in just enough for only him to hear. "She played you twice over, Liam. In both lifetimes. But I guess some men just can't tell the difference between love and a noose." He didn't shout. Didn't even curse. He just looked past me toward Sabrina, his eyes going glassy. I straightened, tucked my phone away and left him sitting there. Some endings didn't require theatrics. Just the truth, delivered like a scalpel. 3 days later the news broke. Socialite Sabrina Cole found dead in luxury apartment. The details were brutal. Her body was discovered in Victor Huang's penthouse while he was out of the country. The crime scene was described as personal, deliberate. And Liam? He was found sitting in the corner of the room, covered in her blood, laughing. When police asked him why, he reportedly said, "She deserved it." It was the kind of story the media feasted on: betrayal, violence, downfall. By the time the trial began, the public had already decided he was guilty. I didn't attend. There was no point. The Liam Carter I had once loved had died long before any judge could pronounce a sentence. Instead, I focused on my company. Ethan's loyalty never wavered, and the artists who had left Carter Productions with me were thriving. Our latest film project broke domestic box office records, and international distributors came calling. At our annual gala, I stood at the center of the room watching my team, my people, celebrate our success. This was my real rebirth. Not the second chance fate had handed me, but the life I had built from the ashes of 2 betrayals. Later that night, alone in my office, I looked out over the city lights. Once those lights had made me feel small, as if the world was too big and I was just a woman trying to survive inside it. Now they felt different. Like a stage. And I was the one holding the spotlight. Somewhere in another life I might have been happy with Liam. But here, in this life, I was happier without him than I ever could have been with him. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. The end.